Today, the topic of discussion is the theory of complex interdependence. This was a theory which came up in the late 1970s, and two names which were associated with this theory were Robert O. Cohen and Joseph S. Nye. They challenged the assumptions of the realist theory and they focused on the emergence of transnational actors. They emphasized that the role of the international regime and the international organizations are becoming important day by day. The role and the importance of trade is also getting more significance in foreign policy matters. Complex transnational connections between states and societies are taking place. The theory of complex interdependence can be seen as an attempt to synthesize between the elements of realism and liberalism. Interdependence theorists introduced the concept of regimes to mitigate anarchy and facilitate cooperation. This theory did not reject realism, but it raised the concern that at times there emerge certain situations where the realist assumptions are not sufficient. Interdependence is the relationship between actors and the increasing cooperation and interaction among the actors in a number of different areas. And regarding the complex interdependence, this can be in issues of conflict or regarding issues of cooperation. Complex interdependence is a theory which stressed complex ways in which, as a result of growing ties, the transnational actors are becoming mutually dependent, vulnerable to each other's actions. Now, there are three main features of complex interdependence. Number one, multiple channels. Number two, absence of hierarchy among issues. Number three, minor role of military force. Multiple channels connecting societies, and this connection can happen in the formal level or in the informal level between the governmental elites or among the non-governmental elites. It can happen also among the transnational organizations. The realist school had emphasized on interstate relations, but the theory of complex interdependence focuses on interstate, intergovernmental and transnational relations. That is, in complex interdependence, the channels are varied in number and it is more comprehensive in nature. Now, the transnational actors are important because they pursue their own interest, but again, they can act as transmission belts, making government policies in various countries more sensitive to others. The scope of the domestic actors have also increased. For example, corporations, banks, trade unions in a particular country are playing an important role in influencing the decisions in other countries. Domestic policies are having impact on others. The transnational communications, it's affecting and reinforcing the effects of this interdependence. Foreign economic policies are blurring the distinction between domestic and foreign policy. The realist school focused on military security, and that was the security which totally dominated the agenda of state decisions. But today, military issues are important, but there are other issues which are also becoming very important. Now, these issues are being considered in several government departments, not just in foreign offices, and at several levels. Inadequate coordination among the actors may lead to involvement of costs by all the actors. Different issues create different coalition, and this can also create different grounds of conflict. The foreign affairs agendas, it's becoming more diverse. No longer the other issues are being subordinated to military security. In 1975, the Secretary of State of United States, Henry Kissinger, described the situation as a progress in dealing with the traditional agenda is no longer enough. A new and an unprecedented kind of issues are coming up and which are merging. The problems regarding energy, resources, environment, population, use of space, seas are also becoming important regarding decision making. Previously, these issues were considered that they are domestic issues, but today it is no longer so. The pluralist democratic countries are dealing their decisions at times because there is difficult in reaching consensus because there are several actors which are playing a role in the domestic field in coming to the decision or concluding on a particular matter. Now, when we are talking of the use of military force, it was said that fears of attacks by the democratic countries are no longer there. These countries do not attack each other. They may fight wars, but they will fight wars usually with non-democratic countries in order to prevent human rights violations which are taking place in those authoritarian states. Force cannot be an instrument to solve every problem. The effects of military force is also costly and uncertain. The direct use of force has been barred in many cases. Military power can still be used politically, though direct use of force is barred among a group of countries. During Cold War, each superpower used the threat of force to deter attacks. The deterrence ability served an indirect protective role. It helped in bargaining. The bargaining tool was particularly important for the United States, whose allies were concerned about the potential Soviet threats. Negative impact of deterrent force is also there. There are two serious qualifications which remain. Number one, drastic social and political change could cause force again to become an important instrument of policy. For example, terrorist attacks in several parts of the world are pushing the countries, whether developed or developing, thinking of using force against the terrorist groups. Number two, even when the elite's interests are complementary, a country that uses military force to protect another may have significant political influence over the other country. Force is important in North-South relations, relations among the third world countries, or in East-West relations. Use of force often has costly effects on non-security goals. Western democracies' popular opposition to prolonged military conflicts has been very high. In America, the public opinion went against the government when America was fighting war in Vietnam. So force has not been an instrument which has been helpful to all states to overcome opposition over all issues. Risks of nuclear escalation affect everyone. The domestic opinion is far less constraining for authoritarian powers than for the US, Europe, or Japan. Even authoritarian powers are reluctant to use force. Force might be ineffective or disrupt other relationships. Three main features of complex interdependence give rise to distinct political processes which translate power resources into power as control of outcomes. Now, during this translation, certain things may be lost or added. Under conditions of complex interdependence, the translation will be different than that of the realist school. In the realist school, the military security is the most dominant goal of the state. It will affect other issues, but in complex interdependence, the non-military problems are given equal importance with the military ones. In complex interdependence, the officials may emphasize on variety of goals. The bureaucracy may focus on certain issues which may not be thought to be a problem by the public opinion. Transnational actors may have different goals. Goals vary on issue areas. The linkage strategies are very important. Military and economically strong states will dominate a variety of organizations and variety of issues by linking their own policies on some issues to other states' policies or other issues. So we can see in a way in United Nations, the permanent countries in the Security Council play a very important role in not only having peace and security throughout the world, but in other issues also. Under complex interdependence, congruence is unlikely. As military force is being devalued, military strong states will find it more difficult to use their overall dominance to control their outcomes. The distribution of power resources in trade, shipping, or oil will be different from the distribution of power resources regarding military issues. When military force is less important, the linkage is less effective for strong states. The dominant states are using economic power. Economic objective may have political implications also. Economic linkage by strong states at times are limited by the domestic, transnational and transgovernmental actors. International actors differ in different issues. Economic interdependence is also impacting the welfare of citizens. Now, agenda setting plays a very important role in complex interdependence. Traditionally, political and military issues were considered important by the statesmen of the countries. But now there has been a shift in the agenda due to the shifts in the balance of power and by the perceived threats to the security of states. Other issues are becoming important which are affecting the security. Non-military issues are emphasized in interstate relations. Interstate agenda are coming up which are focusing on problems of trade, oil, food, multinational corporations, etc. Another concept, politicization, is important in theory of complex interdependence. Now, what is politicization? It is an agitation and controversy over an issue that raises it to the top of agenda. Governments whose strength is increasing may politicize issues by linking them to other issues. International regime which is becoming ineffective may try to bring in certain issues in order to increase its power. Politicization can come from below. Domestic groups can raise dormant issues into the agenda. In the theory of complex interdependence, the role of the transnational and transgovernmental relations are becoming important day by day. There are multiple channels of contact, and a distinction is getting blurred in domestic and international politics. Multinational corporations are playing significant roles as actors and as instruments which are being manipulated by governments at times and which are at times manipulating governments. Actors from other governments are playing an important role in resolution of conflicts in warring countries. Different interpretation from standard proposition of international politics is being given. Now, when we are talking of complex interdependence, one thing it has to be understood that we are talking of interest. Now, whose interest? Is it the interest of the political elites? Or is it the interest of the bureaucrats? Or is it the interest of the economic elites which need to be protected? Ambiguity of national interest is there, and this is leading to increasing problems for the government leaders. Bureaucracies and other actors in domestic politics are having contact with actors from different countries. The centralized control is difficult today. The state is multifaceted. National interest is being defined differently on different issues and at different times. A coherent state is very difficult to reach. International organizations also play an important role in the theory of complex interdependence. In the realist school, the international organizations were in the periphery in world politics. But in this theory, the role of international organizations is increasing day by day. And these international organizations are playing a very important role in political bargaining. They are setting international agenda. They are acting as catalyst for coalition formation. Governments have to be ready in order to deal with any issue at the international level which is going against its national interest. It is the international organization today which is actually defining the salient issues which are important in international relations. International organizations also activate potential condition in world politics. The less developed countries come together and United Nations plays an important role as an international platform for these countries. The small states also can pursue the linkage strategies through the platform of the international organization. Robert Cohen and Joseph Nye have stated that we do not argue that complex interdependence faithfully reflects world political reality. Contrarily, the theory of complex interdependence and the realists portray the ideal types. Most situations in the world will be somewhere in between the two extremes. Cohen and Nye point to a declining separation between high and low politics. They bring in the views of Norman Angell, who had said in pre-World War I period that the great power war was obsolete. A century later, interdependence have increased to a level where his claim is becoming accurate. To conclude, the theory of complex interdependence was brought in the late 1970s by two theorists named Joseph Nye and Robert Cohen. They stated that there are multiple channels of connections between the states and non-state actors. The use of military force or the importance of military force is slowly decreasing in international relations. New agenda, for example, economic or ecological issues are coming up where the countries need to support each other, collaborate with each other in order to bring in a solution. Now, the recognition of multiple channels of interaction has been brought in by this theory of complex interdependence.